in your time doing this so far, I mean, is there any major kind of knowledge that you've gained that's really been the kind of guiding principles or the guiding light as you've gone from filmmaker, making your first movie, all the way to now trying to do a very amazing thing, which is change the atmosphere of filmmaking in the entire Lehigh Valley and create a new, place to foster that creation?
Well, the creativity, I believe, has always been here in the Lehigh Valley. You've got an array of talented filmmakers, but what we're trying to do is to allow newbie filmmakers to get their feet on the ground and learn the basics. And once you learn the basics, then you can start to go out and challenge yourself with harder, more expensive projects, because you don't want to spend your money on making mistakes. You want to spend your money on a project that you really want to make as good as you possibly can. So on one level, we try to educate and inform and to train filmmakers in the various areas that you just touched upon. On the other hand, we try to keep it fairly simple.
What's up, everybody? It's the Poorly Edited Podcast, the show where we put a spotlight on some of the most creative minds we can find, as best as a couple college kids can do.
Not very well.
I'm Chandler Davis.
I'm Patrick Lilly.
My name is Coffee Guy.
We got Lizzie Cates on the camera, and we're live from WXLV The X at L-Tri-C Main Campus. And today we have a very special guest, very interesting guest that I'm very excited to talk to finally at length. Bill Hartin, who is the founder of FIFO.
Yeah, you can say it any way you want. There's a story behind that I'll share with you in a little while.
That's actually the most excited I've been for this episode. Yeah. I was ready for the definitive FIFO pronunciation.
Well, you know what, Bill? Let me throw you a little curveball. I was thinking about it late last night. Couldn't sleep, and I was thinking, what if, hear me out, FIFO? Has anyone ever thrown that out there?
You know, that it's going to disappoint you, but somebody did come up with that, and I kind of gave it a thumbs down. It just doesn't have quite the panache that we're looking for.
It sounds like something you name your dog.
Yes, and probably a poodle. FIFO, come here. Stop what you're doing in the corner and come here.
Well, I got shut down. All right, so Bill, FIFO. What can you tell us a little bit about this organization that you've put together? I mean, since I've gotten into the filmmaking scene in the Lehigh Valley, it's all I hear about, really, and I think it is really the definitive answer to anybody looking to break into this kind of field and doing this kind of work that's interested in making movies.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you've heard the name before. It started about 7 years ago. The origins were in a screenwriting group that I started with a fellow by the name of Bill Marley, who has since passed. But Bill and I persisted with this screenwriting group until it began to deteriorate, and we said, we need something a little bit more than just the writing. And then I decided, well, I'm going to make a film. And so I did. And I spent a lot of money on it, and it's arguably one of the worst films you'll ever watch. But and primarily because of the audio. And then the guy who starred and in my second film, The Writer's Muse, which actually won an award at the prestigious Pocono Mountain Film Festival. I'm sure you've all heard of it. He and I decided we were going to start pulling this disparate community of filmmakers in the Lehigh Valley and the greater Lehigh Valley together to see what might come of it. We knew that there was a lot of energy and a lot of talent out there, but we didn't know what it was. And Gene is a great actor, but he did not want to leave the valley. He's settled here. He's bought a house. He's got a family. That's what keeps you in wherever you're going to end up. So we believe that we can do something here. And I think that we're starting to reap the benefit of all those years, 7 years exactly, to almost the day that we've started all this. And we meet monthly, every first Tuesday of the month at Two Rivers Brewing Company in Easton, Pennsylvania. And we meet there for two reasons. One, the idea came about over sharing a couple of beers with Gene. And then the second reason is that I went there looking for a location to film and ended up asking them if they would mind if we met there. So now we're meeting there on a regular basis. Our membership has grown from roughly just under a dozen people to now it's almost 300. And we've made maybe 24 short films, one way or another, ranging in length from as short as a minute and a half all the way up to about a half an hour in short films. And then over the last 3-4 years, we've assisted with three features. Danny Roebuck's Getting Grace, Michael Owen's Control, which is in post-production, and then a third one that will go unnamed because that's sort of in nowhere land because of lack of funding. Mm-hmm. And that is the key to filmmaking, as you are slowly finding out.
When we went the one time, I remember like a bunch of people were like funding, like that was like the biggest thing. It was like we got the script, we have a bunch of actors that are interested, we're waiting on funding, which is like, it always sucks to hear because then it's like, well, it's like I want like
the shadowy underbelly of the filmmaking process, which is the whole, how do you get the money to make it, which is I think something that is its own art form almost in and of itself. I said it. I think it's something that's almost its own art form in and of itself.
Well, it is the basis, the underlying basis for FIFO, because we wanted to take a different approach than just a group of guerrilla filmmakers on weekends. We know that you need money to make a film. I mean, even if all you're going to do is pay for food and transportation and maybe lodging, but you're not going to pay your crew, you're not going to pay your talent, you still need some money. And you can't ask people for very long to continue to do that because then they think, well, that's not why I got into this. The reason I got into it was I wanted to grow. And when you don't grow into something that is a paying gig in this business, then you're not growing. And so when Danny Roebuck came back to the Valley, actually, because he's a local boy, to Getting Grace, that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. That was truly a big deal. Danny really put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it and a lot of money into it. And it was a real lesson for us as to what we can do. What are the possibilities? And especially for young people like yourself, he made a point of bringing a lot of college-age PAs into the production so they could get experience and then take it back to the schools that they came from, and they came from all over the country, and then use it to advance their careers and then hopefully come back and help with other films. That's kind of the strategy. The other thing that FIFO is trying to do, and it's slow going, but it is moving the needle, is to create a filmmaking culture and community here in the Lehigh Valley based not entirely on the art form or the craft, but as a revenue-generating business. So that's more of our model, and we look at projects through that filter when we are approached by filmmakers and they want to make a film, and they're coming to us with a concept or an idea.
Yeah, there's so much to really, I mean, you can pick any bit of what you just said in since you started your introduction, and there's so much you could talk about. I mean, from making the experiences of making your first film and how that gave you the understanding that I'm sure you're using now when dealing with new filmmakers with FIFO, and the importance of getting this funding and how do you vet things within this process, and what Getting Grace did for proving the concept and the the justifiable necessity that FIFO brings to the process, and as a component of that, I mean, there's so much to pick apart there. Like, what in your time doing this so far, I mean, what is there any major kind of knowledge that you've gained that's really been the kind of guiding principles or the guiding light as you've gone from filmmaker, making your first movie, all the way to now trying to do a very amazing thing, which is change the atmosphere of filmmaking in the entire Lehigh Valley and create a new, place to foster that crearrity?
Well, the creativity, I believe, has always been here in the Lehigh Valley. You've got an array of talented filmmakers, but what we're trying to do is to allow newbie filmmakers to get their feet on the ground and learn the basics. And once you learn the basics, then you can start to go out and challenge yourself with harder, frankly, more expensive projects, because you don't want to spend your money on making mistakes. You want to spend your money on a project that you really want to make as good as you possibly can. So on one level, we try to educate and inform and to train filmmakers in the various areas that you just touched upon. On the other hand, we try to keep it fairly simple. An example is, as I was driving up to the studio, I was coming past all these various and sundry, what I call locations. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't pass a building without looking at it from the standpoint of, I wonder what we could film here.
Yeah.
And so that's just one area, locations. And to date, as far as I know, no one in the Lehigh Valley is, or even beyond, has taken it upon themselves to say, now there is a viable, if not a business, a viable service, that when somebody comes to the valley and they've got a list of locations that they need, I need a farmhouse on a hill. It can't be in a valley. I want a farmhouse in a hill with just a few trees around it. Not a forest, just a few trees around it. And then you delve even more into the description of what that filmmaker wants. And that's just one area, which then you can turn around and say, well, finding locations can take time, and it can also cost money depending on the locations that are written into your script. So what we try to advise starting out filmmakers is use what you have and what is available. It won't cost you anything, and you will have access to it, and you can use it for darn near as long as you need to. Again, that's just one area, locations. Then you get into the talent pool, the acting and the voiceovers and the stunt people. Very few people appreciate the impact that good stunt people can have on a film. Not only does it save the lives of your main actors, but you've put somebody in place who has some experience in how to tumble and roll, how to smash a car. Not that we smash any cars, because that would cost too much, but you get the idea.
We're on our way, though. We're on our way to smashing cars.
Right. That's our next goal is to...
Zach, would you let your car get smashed?
2020 is a big year, all right? So we're going to do a lot of cool things. I want to talk about, so you said that there's so much creative talent here in the Lehigh Valley, and it's not just filmmakers. I mean, there's so many different kinds of creative people. Have you lived here your whole life? I'm getting somewhere with this, I promise.
Nope. I am a Midwestern transplant. I've only lived here for a touch over 16, going on 17 years now.
Really?
I'm actually from Wisconsin.
Okay. So obviously you were right, but when you got here, you knew that you could help cultivate something. What gave that away, though? Because you very easily could have tried to do that, and then nothing could have happened. So what were the things that jumped out at you when you came here that made you think this is different and I can help grow something very cool and very special?
A very good friend of mine clipped an article out of the Morning Call that the headline read, "The Lehigh Valley's next new industry, filmmaking." And I got all excited. I nearly wet my pants. And I went and I started going to these meetings. I started calling up people and contacting the names that were in the article. And I was so frustrated and disappointed that nothing was happening. And yet I saw all these people with energy and excitement and vision, but nothing was happening. There was no central clearinghouse that they could all come to and say, "Hey, let's do this." And so that's when I pretty much decided that because there was a need, that it would eventually, if we could satisfy that need, it's almost like build it and they will come kind of philosophy. And so far that has worked pretty well. There have been some people that, just to be honest, that we're not for everybody. You have to have a certain level of, shall we say, relaxed ego. You can think an awful lot of yourself, an awful lot of your talent, and an awful lot of what you want to do and can do. But you also have to have an ego that you can put aside for the sake of the project. And filmmaking is about as collaborative an enterprise as you're ever going to find. You rely on other people almost more than you rely on yourself, because you can't do it all. I don't care who says they can, you can't. And end up with a quality product.
Ooh, I like that. I like that line a lot, honestly. I think there's a lot of truth to that for sure. And I think that's something that it's very easy to overlook as well. And, people, like things like auteur theory and everything like that really tends to, get in the way of people being able to collaborate in a way that is actually constructive and understanding the realistic possibilities for their projects and realizing that you might be able to do something, but there's probably someone who could do it a lot better if you would just team up with them, and it would make a way more quality product.
Well, to that point, if the five of us decide after this is over that we're going to make a film and we're going to get all excited about it, but guess what we have to do first? First, we have to decide who's going to write it. And then we're going to have to decide after that script is written, is it worthy of all our time and effort and talents? And then we have to decide who's going to do what. Because I need to rely on you, and you need to rely on me to do the things that need to be done when they need to be done. And there's an old saying that goes, if you find someone with an abiding need to do what you need to have done, you have found the perfect person for that role, for that job. And HR follows that to a certain extent, but that is so true, because I know that if I turn around and say, Chandler, I need this, it's going to be there, and you're not going to turn around to somebody else and say, hey, where's the thing that Bill needs? Mm-hmm. Because that holds up production, and every minute costs money.
And that might just never end, because then what if the second person's they go to someone else and they just keep going to find the thing that you were supposed to do at step one.
Yeah, and there's another saying that a certain substance runs downhill. Well, that's what happens when you start to
not a good
when you start and it doesn't smell good either. Yeah. But that's what happens, and then you get to the end of and it's wrap, and everyone's so excited and wow, we're really great, and then you get into post-production and you realize we didn't really get what we needed. Mm-hmm. We're not fulfilling the vision that we had for all of our efforts. And you really can't, yeah, it's easy to look at me and say, well, it's all Bill's fault because it was his stupid idea to do it to begin with. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. If you need to, that's fine. My shoulders aren't that broad, but it's not the first time that it's happened. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And so I understand it. And you really don't want to be blamed, or you don't want to take the accountability for something that you didn't do well. But if you do something extraordinary, if you really challenge yourself to do something extraordinary, great sound, great soundtrack, great acting, which all starts with a great script, one that's simple and meaningful and compelling. Now, when you see that finished product, you're going to look around to your crew and your teammates and your fellow filmmakers, and you're going to go, damn, we really did something special. And it's a wonderful feeling. It is absolutely wonderful. When we shot The Writer's Muse over at the Silk Mill in Easton, it was an intense 2-day shoot in one of the in 2 locations. One was up in the dilapidated rooms that they let us use, and the other one was down at a restaurant in downtown Easton. And we wrapped after we did the restaurant scene. And it was, I knew that we had some really good stuff. Gene did a great job. The rest of the actors were wonderful. The crew was great. But when we started going through it in post, then I realized just how much effort had been put forth. And you're talking about set design, and you're talking about dressing the location. That's when you take that little baby step forward, and you now know not only what you can do, but what it takes to do it. And the really neat thing is, and I think this is what people mostly feel good about, is that when they realize they did something well, they also realize how much they've grown in the process. And that you can't replicate. You can't fool yourself after you've done something terrible, and you look at it and go, I worked on that. Mm-hmm. But you're not saying, wow, yeah. By the way, I'm trying to act very pseudo humble, but I'm really proud of what we did, mm-hmm. and that was amazing, and I'm really proud of it because I was a part of it, and that really goes back to the collaborative nature of filmmaking.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. Awesome. I think we're going to go to a commercial break unless Pat can't cue up the commercials, because that's about that time. Pat looks like he's struggling, though. He looks a bit concerned. He said keep going.
The thing I usually click on is not here.
Oh, cool.
So, I'll do a little deep dive into the folder to see if I can find anything.
We've had some changes at the studio. Some things are moved around. That's fine. No, but Bill, you very obviously have such a grounded reality and outlook in filmmaking, and obviously you have experience in this field that has gotten you to this point of being able to I think have such a perspective. But I'm interested in what I'm interested in what led you to this. I mean, you said you're not even from this area per se. When you saw that newspaper clipping in the morning call, I mean, why were you so excited about filmmaking? Why were you so, where does that come from? What is your inspiration for all of that, and what's the roots there?
Well, my background goes back to primarily as a writer. Mm-hmm. If you ask my kids, who are actually older than you guys, they'll say I've done everything under the sun in terms of jobs, and which includes teaching and working on newspapers and working on a radio station and having run 2 of my own marketing firms and done advertising and promotion and PR and medical and all kinds of stuff. So when I came here, shall we say, I was about to enter the autumn of my years, because I'm a lot older than you guys. And that means that I have done a lot, which means I've failed a lot. And it's in those failures that I realized that I didn't want to fail as often or as badly as I had in the past. That's not to say that I'm sitting here calling myself a loser. I also ran those marketing firms very successfully and was able to live a very good life. But the writing is what got me going and what kept me sustained. And I've written, I don't know how many short stories and novels and screenplays and articles, and I worked for the Associated Press and UPI as a stringer for a while. And I was also a professional photographer. So all this creative input from those jobs and those tasks, they all fed that. So when I saw that headline, to me it was like, oh, somebody other than myself finds this not only interesting, but a strong possibility. But I also realized in reading the article that it was all about the creative. It was not about how are we going to fund it, where are we actually going to do this, and then the ideas that started popping up at these meetings were awfully grandiose.
Right.
They started saying things like, "Well, we need a soundstage." And I raised my hand and I said, "For whom? Do you have production companies coming and knocking on our invisible door saying, we really need this soundstage and we're going to come there and make 10 films next year and put 20, 30, 40, $100 million into your Lehigh Valley economy?"
Yeah.
No. But wouldn't it be neat to have one? Well, it'd be neat to have a lot of things. But who's going to pay for it? And where are we going to put it? Well, we could put it over here. Why do we want to put it by the highway where now we've compounded our sound issues in a sound stage?
It just gave me a mini nightmare just thinking about that.
Yeah.
All that noise pollution.
Yeah, I saw all your heads nod when I said that. I was like, well yeah. So that's the other point that I'd like to make. It's not as though we're sitting here trying to use calculus to get us to the moon and back. We are. It's pretty basic stuff, and it's pretty basic business sense that you need to take when you start seriously making films. Because eventually, in my mind anyway, if I'm going to put forth the effort, let alone the money, I want people to see this.
Yeah.
And so how do you get more people to see it than just your relatives, who are probably going to excuse themselves from the room once you pull it out and say, "Hey, I want you to see my new film." "Oh, geez, I'd love to stay, but I got to sort my sock drawer," or something like that. So you've got to think the whole thing through, and it is a process. It's a process that has just like a film. It has a beginning, the very kernel of an idea, the middle, here you are in the midst of it with alligators up around your ankles, and the end, where we've pulled it all together and we're proud of our efforts, and now we're going to share it. And what's interesting is that there are so many vintage theaters here in the Lehigh Valley, the Roxy being one of them, and they happen to be very, very supportive of FIFO and have allowed us to shoot there. One of our films is called Only in the Movies. It's just a whimsical thing, but they let us shoot there. And Richard Wolff is fantastic. He's always receptive. He's not only going to agree with me, but he's always receptive in terms of listening to me. And that's what you need. The worst thing to do is to start to talk about something and they just shut you down. Yeah. But you're going to run into it. That is a bald fact about filmmaking. Not everybody has the same taste. Not everybody is going to get on the same bandwagon that you might be on. But I'm kind of rambling now. But that's kind of all in the mix of how I see filmmaking being able to flourish here in the Lehigh Valley, and we are making progress. It's got a great history, by the way, of films being made here. One of the ironic that one of the films that it was never commercially successful, but it was a very, very good film, is called The Florentine. And it's got a lot of big names: Michael Madsen, Marilyn Manson, Hal Holbrook, Sean Penn, or not Sean, the other Penn, his brother. But anyway, some really big names, and it was shot right here in the Lehigh Valley.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yes, it can be done, but you also have to understand the business side in order to address and fulfill the creative side.
So when you're writing a script, then do you have to like balance, like do you sometimes just have to go with the idea that it would be less expensive to do?
Well, yeah,
I want to write a script, and then you're like, well, this won't be made by us, but I'm glad it's written, because it's like, I mean, because scripts, like, it could be equated to a novel, and like that you wrote it, and it's like its own thing, but like,
yeah, I wanted to say, like, I mean, I hear. I didn't know if you had any knowledge to impart in the sense of like, yeah, like what Pat said, because something I hear all the time, whenever I hear someone who's they don't have a film to their name that they've ever made, but the first script they write is like the most grandiose, like Star Wars wasn't George Lucas's first film. You know what I mean? American Graffiti was an early film that George Lucas did, and it was just about people driving cars. You know, like it was way less ambitious
kind of what
monetarily.
Star Wars is about, too.
Just people
Just
driving
space
cars.
cars,
Space cars. You know what I mean? So like,
You're absolutely right.
yeah.
I don't know if I can say it any better. But getting back to the basics, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
The first script that I wrote, I got into screenwriting accidentally. I was wanting to improve my fiction writing, and back in Madison, Wisconsin, they've got something called Right by the Lake. Well, if you know anything about Madison, it sits on an isthmus with two lakes. So
that's a great word.
To write, W-R-I-T-E, by the lake meant that you were going to spend a week, I think it was a 2-week time frame, and you were going to. It was a workshop. It was just like the Iowa Writers Workshop, only less well known. And I had dawdled and procrastinated. I didn't know if I was going to get the time off. And then my boss said, "Yeah, you got the time off." So I went to sign up. Lo and behold, I couldn't get in. It was full. I said, "Well, do you have anything else?" "Well, we've got this screenwriting thing here." And I thought, well, anything to hone my skills. I really would like to learn in my fiction writing, and I prefer dramatic fiction versus horror or anything like that. I was trying to create more believable and vivid scenes. I thought, well, what better, right?
Yeah.
So I get in this class, and it was like somebody gave me the first free shot of heroin, and I had to have more. And then it was up to me. I mean, it was that addictive. I thought, this is fantastic. Oh my
Just
gosh.
all the possibilities you could
Yeah, so I wrote this first script, 120 pages.
Wow.
In 1 week. 10 pages, 12 pages, and a day. And I'm flying. My hair's on fire. I'm just thinking this is the greatest thing in the world. If that first film was arguably the worst one, this script was the biggest dud that anybody has ever read. And instead of being smart about it, talking about failures now, okay, mistakes, somebody gave me a contact out in Hollywood. Send your script here, or get somebody to look at it. Oh, yeah, great. I was already writing my Oscar acceptance speech.
Yeah.
Right? So you just mentioned Spielberg and Lucas and all that. They had all their early stuff.
Yeah.
All their early stuff. Probably shot on 8 or Super 8 cameras. But, yeah, they got all that out of their system. Mm-hmm. So all that I got out of my system back in Madison. Came out here, saw the headline, and thought, I want to do something good, worthy. But I can't do it by myself.
Right.
I need people like you to step up and say, well, I can do this, and I can do this, and I can do this. And lo and behold, we're making a movie.
Just like that.
And it might not be an Oscar winner, but it sure as hell is going to be better than that script that I wrote from that workshop. But I learned so much about the writing part of it that it started to dawn on me that I am the master of my fate. And I had I had Vietnam War scenes in this thing. I had mystical trees blowing up. I had, what was the other thing? Oh, a ton of aerial shots. Easily $500,000 of aerial shots. Did I know that? Not a clue. Not a clue. So back to your original question. Yes, when I write, I limit myself to what I know I can find and afford.
Mm-hmm. So when you have an idea, then if you have an idea to write something, do you ever have that conversation with yourself, or would this be a better script or a novel? Or is it more just the way you portray the story?
You talked, because you said you were a novelist, you were more of a traditional writer in that sense, and then you did the screenwriting to hone that. But did you notice any major differences between that kind of writing and then screenwriting? Because I know, I believe there's a story of, I think it was F. Scott Fitzgerald, who was, a great novelist, but then when he went to screenwriting in Hollywood, he did very poorly because he writes screenplays like he was writing novels, and that didn't translate well to the medium. So I don't know if there was any major, kind of things you noticed transitioning between those two.
Well, that's why the writing process, at least for me, is step by step by step. I start with literally something, a page or less, of encapsulating what is my idea, what is my story. And I force myself to write the start. Where is my hero or my protagonist, and what journey is he going to go on? And in the middle is where most of your conflict and most of your problems occur. Mm-hmm. And then you spend the last part of the film figuring it out and finding a solution and resolving things. And so I force myself to do that. I may not like what I've written, but at least I've had my diarrhea moment where everything gets out in a concise manner, so that I don't get bogged down with scene descriptions and backstory and the history of the building that we're going to be.
And then you lose the whole.
You get lost. And so now I've got my one page, and I go from there into a fairly detailed outline, and I try to envision how I see that movie, that film, panning out. Mm-hmm. And it might be nothing more than writing down warehouse. John discovers the cocaine. At the same time, the cops show up. And then I've got, so all that is all that stuff that's going to happen. There may be then the next thing is jail, right? And then the next thing is on the lam. And the next thing is runs into Mary, and on down. And so I start to see and feel what the film is going to look like, sound like, and feel like. And it's very, very common for me then to start taking the pieces and moving them around. Now, the warehouse is way too early. And maybe he needs to run into Mary first and start this relationship. Maybe I don't. Maybe, I get it. He's coming out of jail. Oh, yeah, that works. And why was he in jail? Oh, that's right. He got involved with drugs. So therefore, when he goes into the warehouse, now it's starting to make sense. You see how you start to play with it? And that's why you see a lot of people use a big whiteboard and they use Post-its. Yeah. And they write on it and they move the stuff around and they'll color code it. Some people go nuts with just the and they're the folks that I call getting ready to get ready. They never actually write it, but they're always getting ready. So that's just part of the process that I go through. And once I think that I've got a lockdown script, then I go out and try to make it. But I've limited myself. I started out saying, I'll do 20-minute short films. Now I do 3 to 7 minute short films because first of all, it's the budget. And I want to be able to compensate people for their time and effort and talent. But you don't learn that until you've gotten into it and you realize what things cost, how long do they take. Somebody told me that they were going to shoot their film and they were going to shoot all these scenes in 3 days. And I said, how many scenes? They said, I'm going to shoot, it's going to be like 42 scenes. I said, in 3 days? You got to be kidding me. You won't get through 12 in 3 days. Crazy. So 42? Now, he didn't want, he wasn't happy with the news, but it turned out that I was absolutely right. And there are carcasses of scripts and films along the roadside that people have just gotten so far in and realized, I can't do this. I don't know how, I don't have the money, and all my people are leaving me because I don't know what I'm doing. That's fairly common, believe it or not.
Wow.
So do you think if you could say anything to those people, maybe the getting ready to get ready people, or the people who you think, are on the path to be, have one of those projects on the side of the road, what do you think is, I'm sure there isn't one cure-all, but I mean, what do you think is a good guiding principle to maybe steer people away from falling into that trap? Because I think it kind of is a trap to get to that point and then it's too late and you realize I made so many mistakes back there I didn't know about, and now it's too late and now, I'm in this position.
Well, I think that nobody does anything wrong on purpose.
Right.
They mean well, their intentions are good. The hard part is to rein in your enthusiasm, your utter profound belief in the words that you're putting down on a page, the idea that's in your head. You can see it. You can almost smell those scenes as you think them through. Don't let that become your mistress. You have to back up and say, okay, I got that out of my system with the one page. Now I have to be the practical filmmaker. I have to decide what is it that I can actually do and how does that relate to what I originally wanted to do. Because in most cases, you back out of those challenging, expensive production scenes into something that's much more doable. But you learn along the way. And the best thing after that happens and you've got your script locked down, the best thing to do is to surround yourself with people who know a lot more than you do. And they'll take a look at that script and they'll tell you where your possible pitfalls are, where you're going to end up with that 1,000-mile stare in your face and not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
So keep it, I always use the keep it simple, stupid approach. Keep it as simple as possible and manageable, and then organize. You are never going to organize as much as your film is going to need, but still try. There was a film that I've done or been involved in that the pre-production has been absolutely perfect. You get so far into it, and it's like, I didn't think of that. And it's not that anybody made a mistake. It's not anything wrong. It's just the more you can eliminate that, the easier the production will go, and the better. In the end, have fun, and that allows you to have more fun than not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think the planning is definitely important. I think the writing. Making sure the writing's solid at the very beginning is important, and the pre-production eliminates so many. You can almost visualize those problems before they happen on set. If you do pre-production well enough, you can realize those things that you didn't think about at the beginning. Yeah.
The problem is, though, that a lot of stuff you don't think about until you hit it on set. So you just kind of have to. That's like seems like something you have to get a lot from experience.
Yeah.
Just knowing what.
Yeah,
to do
and to know the process, to know not just at face value for this shot what you need, but what the inner workings, what all those processing,
work, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing is, you don't have to have the experience.
Other people.
You have to know the people who do have that experience, because one of you might be an incredible sound person, and I've got this wonderful shot we're shooting in a sewer. Well, you can imagine the bounce, the echo, the levels, the all the influences on that audio if you are going to have to record dialogue down there, let alone any traffic that might be going by. And usually at this level, most of the FIFO members don't have the budget to be able to pay to block off an entire street so that you control that kind of traffic. It's not pure guerrilla filmmaking, but it is, you've got to take certain things into account. One other thing that filmmakers should keep in mind is that the communities around here are starting to get a little more informed themselves. For instance, when we shot over in Nazareth, they just opened up the doors for Michael Owen and his movie Control. And they were wonderful. And I suspect that if he wanted to shoot another one there, he would probably get the same treatment. But they also realize what it takes. And there were a lot of people that weren't happy when the street got shut down and all these vintage cars were being driven up and down, because it was closed down a business, closed down a street. And you have to take all that into consideration. So again, back to the origins of any film, and that is, what are you going to put into your script to still keep it interesting and fascinating and compelling without costing a bunch or without having to spend a lot of money on permits and public services like police and security and fire and the EMTs. Because if you're going to use any pyrotechnics, your budget just went through the roof. And that's what a lot of people think, that, oh, well, I'll just throw a few firecrackers over here and that'll
I've got some fireworks left over from last year. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, that'll be great. We can stage the entire War and Peace battle scene with those 7 firecrackers.
And we'll get it all in one take. Nice and easy. Do you have any like movies you'd recommend for people who are like, to get like the right idea of scale that they think that you can handle with a small budget?
Good examples of maybe small budget.
So my own went to like Reservoir Dogs, where it's like there's some exterior shots, but most of it's like in just a warehouse and it's just the actors. But then again, you also can't count on getting great actors if you're writing your first script.
There's a bit of a shootout scene in the city. There's like that one.
Wasn't necessary.
Jump the budget up a little bit.
I'm going to kind of hedge on that one and suggest this. We've been talking about making a film with a 3-act structure, or however way you're going to structure it, but at least start, middle, and end. So what I'm going to suggest is that if you really want to learn and get lessons from your filmmaking efforts, write some scenes. Write 3 scenes and shoot it on a weekend and get everybody you think you're going to need together and have a pre-production meeting and get the input. And about halfway through that first meeting, when you started divvying up the duties, Pat, I want you to handle set design. Chandler, you're in charge of location, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So everybody knows what they're supposed to do. And now you start to break down the script, those 3 scenes, which usually shouldn't be more than a page. because that's about all you can probably handle. And use one location and make it available, accessible, and have a true start time and an end time. And you're going to learn an awful, awful lot about your own capabilities, the challenges of actual filmmaking, and then you're going to look at what you got, and you're going to listen to that sound, and you're going to watch those performances, and you're going to look for things in the scene. How did we light it? Is that the lighting that I saw in my head when I wrote those scenes? And if all you shot were close-ups, is that what's going to make everybody interested in your film? Nothing but close-ups? Probably not. Probably not. But as far as films that...
no, I mean, if you want to hedge that, you gave an amazing answer that I was actually kind of subconsciously hoping you'd give, because I think there is no better, masterclass in the process than to just do it and put yourself out there and put yourself out in the water and sink or swim. And whichever the outcome is, it's going to be an amazing learning experience, whether it goes well or not. Probably not going to go well. I
guess that also makes sense, because if there's a movie you can think of that was done really well on a small budget, the script must have been amazing.
Yeah. Like the Reservoir Dogs,
which you can't
amazing.
count on writing a Reservoir Dogs for anywhere near your first script,
right?
Or ever, probably. But I don't know, I guess that makes sense. The best film to watch to improve is your own.
Oof. It's a good line.
Well,
I'll take it. He said it all, but I'll take it.
Here's another starting point for you. Since location can characterize your film so much, and you just kind of capture that with Reservoir Dogs. I mean, it was all shot in that one area. But go out and scout locations and find a fascinating location, one that you have access to, that you can shoot both in interiors and exteriors, so that it's all going to hold together. You don't have to move equipment. You don't have to transport people. And then write a story about that. Just a 3-scene story about that. It's going to be a diner.
Yeah.
It'll really challenge you, because if really true, again, in my humble estimation, really true classic filmmaking is not so much about the pyrotechnics and the special effects and the CGI and the explosions and the car chases and all that kind of stuff. It's about the human narrative. It's about the human condition. And I again, speaking for myself, those are the types of films that really get to me. That's why films like Shawshank Redemption is such a classic for me. I mean, that is not one location, although it is one location, but it has the impression of one location. Another one that's rather obscure is Life is a House. If you ever get a chance to see that, it's a very touching film, and it does have maybe several locations, but the storyline itself is so compelling that you just are so. At least I was. I was so glad that I was able to see it, and the people that shared it with me, and so that's one. I mean, the list is long. You've got your own, but yeah, if you want to really learn something, go out and start with those first few steps. Write the scenes, start to break it down, figure out your shot list, and by shot list I mean you have to know. Am I going to shoot it from the side? Am I going to have backlight? Is it going to be a close-up, medium close? I mean, you really break it down so that when you get your shots, it's all there. And then when you go into post-production, that's where the magic happens, and that's when you start to put it together.
Dude, there's so much good knowledge here for anyone that is even remotely interested in any part of the process for making movies. And I think there's a lot of people who do want to do that and maybe are not sure where to start, and is very, very scary with all of the, as you've touched on, the insurmountable variables, and odds that you're against, like just so many different parts of the process to have due diligence with and everything. Like, it is a lot, but you've broken it down in a way that it actually feels manageable to tackle in a way and to learn from it as well. And so, to that I say, go to the next FIFO meeting if you liked even 1% of anything that was said today and thought it was interesting, because FIFO meetings are always pretty much like this, in a distilled manner of surrounding yourself with amazing creative people who are all trying to realize their visions in a plethora of different manners. And it's an amazing place to network with like-minded individuals to build the teams that you've talked about.
And and like you guys probably know, going from Lehigh Valley, it doesn't seem like anything's going on, but like stuff is. You just have to be in the right circles to hear about it. And FIFA is the place to hear about movie stuff going on that you can actually help with, which is really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
There's an old joke that goes like this: when you're out in Hollywood and you jump in a cab, and you tell the cab driver you want to go here. First thing he does, he reaches in his back pocket and pulls out a script and hands it to you. Right? Well, the only place that happens here in the Lehigh Valley is, and now here comes the commercial break, is with FIFO. And it's and we meet the first Tuesday of every month, 6:30 at Two Rivers Brewing Company on Northampton Street in Easton. But more than once, newbies that will come to the meeting will come up to me afterward during the networking session and say, I had no idea this was here, that this was available. I've been looking for this for years, and now I found it. And I'm glad to hear that, because that's what we're about. This isn't about me. This isn't about Bill Hartin. Mm-hmm. This is about you folks and all the other folks that make it to the meetings, and they're so fluid. There's not the same people every month, and they bring new projects in, and some are features, and some are documentaries, and some are short films, and some are weekend projects that they are doing what I just described, and they'll tell you, this is what I need. I hope someone will raise their hand and say they want to help out, because it's not FIFO providing the people as much as the opportunity to get to know the people who will contribute to your project in one way or another. And yes, it'll be a learning experience that then you'll bring back to the meeting in subsequent months, but that's how we all learn. And we also have speakers to come in and talk to us about a variety of things, all filmmaking related, but all, it's not just, people gabbing, and we also screen our short films that we're working on. It might be outtakes, it might be the full project, but we try to mix it up. We try to keep it interesting and challenging.
Amazing. Awesome. I agree with everything you said. I've been to quite a few meetings, and I think the atmosphere remains the same, but also changing in a vivid way that keeps things fresh, and everyone's excited, and it's a great place to be, honestly, every time.
I also like people will go up and they'll be like, I'm doing this project. Mm-hmm. I have actors. I don't have any funding, which is a cool thing to hear. Yeah. Because you're like, oh, that's okay to be like, I'm making it, but I don't have the money yet. Yeah. Because that's like, I think it gets in a lot of people's heads where it's like, I can't do it because I don't have the money. So how am I supposed to get it? Mm-hmm. And it's really constructive to hear other people in the same starting place you are, but you can just you can get through it and make the movie. It just takes the right you have to go in the right direction to get there.
And there's no shame either, or like ego involved with any of it. Like even if you're just starting out or you're not even sure, it's like, I'll come on set and maybe like learn so I can be helpful, or like, I haven't done this that much, but I'd like to help, what can we work out? Like, I want to be involved, and there's always something to do. And if you really want to be involved. So I think it's really cool. Everyone's so nice. There's so much to be done. So many great movies to be made. Just need more talented people to make them. So
that's about all the time we have, unfortunately.
Yeah. Bill, it's been amazing talking to you. You've imparted so much wisdom in this field, and it's clear to me, especially from talking to you at length now, for this interview, as much as it has been, every time I've gone to FIFO, and when I heard you speak at the L-Tri-C panel earlier this month, your guidance down this path for really fostering a community for filmmaking in the Lehigh Valley, I think is very viable. I think is already seeing the fruits of that labor currently, and I think it's only going to get better. I think it's only going to get bigger, and I'm lucky to be around to see it. So I'm excited.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure, and I hope that you guys will stick around and help FIFO grow and help the filmmaking community grow, because I can tell you've got a real passion for it, and interest, and dedication.
Thank you so much. You. All right. Our intro and outro music are both by Food Truck, so go check them out on Spotify or whatever. And
we're also on Spotify, every podcast, everything, and YouTube for the video versions. And thank you so much for watching and listening. For the Edit Podcast, signing out.
Like I low self-esteem, why don't you reassure me? I'm so scared and nervous, I feel like I don't have a purpose. It's so tense in here, with all these people around me. Like eyes with a stranger, to them I'm just a stranger. Making conversation at the family shindig, awkward situation.